Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So in the series of pattern printing, this is the next pattern that we are going to print. Now before I get started with this pattern, if you have not seen my previous video, I recommend you first see that so that the understanding of this pattern becomes much easier. Now let's start with the pattern. Now for such complex patterns, it is better to divide the pattern into different parts and then analyze what is to be printed and how many times it has to be printed. So over here I have divided this pattern into 4 halves. First I have divided the pattern on the number of characters being printed, that is the top half has increasing number of characters and the bottom half has the decreasing number of characters. Similarly, I have done it for the top half and the bottom half. Now let's see how many characters have and how many spaces are to be printed in all the 4 parts. Now as we have calculated in the previous video, when we have such patterns in which the top half has increasing number of characters and the bottom half has decreasing number of characters, the number of row up till which the characters have to be printed in increasing order is n plus 1 by 2. And for such patterns, we have to introduce if-else block so that we can handle the case for the increasing and decreasing number of characters. So the first block, that is the if block, will take care for the increasing number of characters and the else block will take care for the decreasing number of characters. So our control has to enter if block if and only if the number of row that is the row count is less than equals to n plus 1 by 2. So over here we will take care of this part, and in the else block we will take care of this part. Now for both the sides, the top half and the bottom half, we can see that first some spaces are to be printed and then the characters are to be printed. So over here first we will print some amount of spaces and then we have to print some amount of characters. And the same thing has to be done for the second half. Now let's calculate how many number of spaces and characters are to be printed in both the halves. Let's see for the spaces. For the first row we have 3 spaces and then we have 1 character. For the second row, we have 2 spaces and 2 characters. For the third row, we have 1 space and 3 characters. And the fourth row, we have 0 space and 4 characters. These characters are the number of characters for the first half of the top half. And for the second half, over here for the first row, we have 0 number of characters. Then for the second row we have one character, third row has 2 characters and fourth row has 3 characters. This part is very simple. We can easily conclude that in this part the total number of characters are being printed is equivalent to I minus 1. For this part we can see the number of characters being printed is equals to I, that is a row count, and the number of spaces being printed is equivalent to n plus 1 by 2 minus I. Now let's see how did we get it. Over here we can see that the sum of the number of spaces and characters is equivalent to 4, which is equivalent to our n plus 1 by 2. Now, since total number of characters being printed is equivalent to n plus 1 by 2 and the number of the required character is equivalent to I, hence the number of spaces will be equivalent to n plus 1 by 2 minus I. So let's see if our first half works correctly. So over here we will have the number of spaces that we have to print is n plus 1 by 2 minus I, and the number of stars that are to be printed is the sum of these stars, that is equivalent to I, and the sum of these and these stars, that is I plus I minus 1. So over here we will have 2 into I minus 1. So I am commenting this and let's see if this works properly. Okay, so I have forgotten the system.out.println statement, which takes us to the next line as soon as the work for the row has been done. See, the top half of the pattern has been printed. So now let's see for the bottom half. Now for the bottom half, the number of spaces being printed now let's calculate. The number of spaces being printed for the 5th row is 1, and the number of characters being printed for the first half is 3. For the 6th row, the number of spaces are 2, and the number of characters are also 2. For the 7th row, we have number of spaces 3, and the number of characters 1, the number of stars. Now for this part, for the 5th row, we have 2 characters. For the 6th row, we have 1 character, and for the 7th row, we have 0 characters. So over here, we can see the number of spaces being printed is connected to the row count and the mid. Over here, we can see the number of spaces being printed is equivalent to n plus 1 by 2, and this has to be subtracted from our row count. Now let's verify this. For I is equals to 5, this is our 4, we have already calculated. 5 minus 4 comes to be 1, and 1 is the number of space that is to be printed. For the 6th row, we have 6 minus 4, that comes to be 2. And for the 7th row, we have 7 minus 4, that is 3. So, I minus n plus 1 by 2 is the number of spaces that are to be printed for the lower half. So, over here, we will have I minus n plus 1 by 2. Now, let's see how many stars are to be printed. Over here we can see that the sum of row and the number of characters being printed for the first half is equal to 8. And when we see for the second half, the sum is equals to 7. Since this is equivalent to 8, which is n plus 1, so the number of characters being printed in the first half of the bottom half is equivalent to n plus 1 minus I. Let's verify this. Over here, n plus 1 is 8. When I is equals to 5, the number of characters being printed becomes 3. When I is equals to 6, number of characters being printed is 2. And for 7, it will be 1. Now for the second half, the sum comes to be 7, which is equivalent to our number of rows. So over here, the number of characters being printed will be directly equivalent to n minus I. So for the bottom half, we can conclude that these are the number of spaces that are to be printed, and this plus this is the number of stars that are to be printed. So over here this we have already written. Now let's write for the number of stars. It is 2 into n minus 2 into I plus 1. So let's see if our code works. The system dot out dot print ln. See, our pattern has been printed. This was all for today's video. If you like my videos and you want to see more such videos, do subscribe to my channel. And in case you have any doubts or you want to see some other video, please leave a comment down below. I will surely make a video for it. Thank you.